Welcome to the Bovine Podcast, where we tear apart dairy myths and rebuild them with data-driven truth. Today, we're tackling the billion-dollar question keeping every dairy producer awake in 2025. Should you buy replacements, or is that financial suicide? Heifer prices just hit $412 for Segwit. Mega-dairies are hoarding genetics, and your competitors are locking in 54% savings by raising their own. This isn't your grandfather's replacement math. It's a survival equation where genomics meet robot feeders. We'll expose why that $3,000 heifer purchase could bankrupt your operation within 2 lactations. You'll hear how Ontario producers are slashing infertility rates by 41% using genomic firewalls. And we'll break down the 3 labor metrics that separate profitable heifer programs from money pits. Stick around. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to calculate your break-even point using the BCRC calculator, and why waiting 6 months could cost you $2,810 per heifer in lost lifetime revenue. Let's dig in.
Well, hello there, you financially astute dairy folks. If you've so much as glanced at the recent auction results, or maybe dared to open your 2025 budget, you've likely felt that, tightening in the chest.
Oh, yeah. Seeing what replacement heifers are going for these days.
It's pretty eye-watering. Makes you wonder if they're sprinkling gold dust on those feed rations, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a far cry from just a few short years ago, that's for sure. We're in territory that would have made even the most seasoned dairy economist, raise an eyebrow or two.
Absolutely. And that's precisely what we're unpacking for you today. You might as well toss those old spreadsheets, the ones comparing raising versus buying.
Yeah, they're probably out of date.
Right out the window. The game has seriously changed, and our deep dive into the latest data suggests that in 2025, raising your own replacements isn't just like a smart move. It could actually be the financial linchpin of your whole operation. We're talking about potentially uncovering some serious profit hiding right there on your farm.
Precisely. We're witnessing a real confluence of factors here in this replacement market, a perfect storm, you could call it.
Perfect storm, yeah.
You've got these record-breaking prices bumping right up against the supply that is, quite frankly, shrinking faster than ice in July.
Shrinking is putting it mildly. Let's throw some hard numbers your way just to paint a clearer picture.
Yeah.
We've got recent auction data out of Ontario.
Okay.
For those heifers tipping the scales at over 900 pounds, we're seeing prices hitting $326 to $328 per hundredweight.
Averaging around $326 per 92 cents.
Exactly. That's definitely not chicken feed.
No. And it gets even more, shall we say, motivating. When you look at the slightly lighter categories, those 800 to 899 pound heifers, they're commanding between $300 to $72 and $383 per hundredweight.
Okay.
And the 700 to 799 pound group, well, brace yourselves. We're looking at a range of $356.07 all the way up to a jaw-dropping $407.11 per hundredweight.
Wow.
And some sales even peaked higher than that, around $412.
So just to bring that down to earth for a second, if you were actually in the market for, say, a 900-pound heifer, you'd be looking at an outlay of roughly $2,942, give or take.
That's a substantial investment for just one animal that hasn't even started contributing to the milk tank yet.
Exactly.
It really underscores the significant financial pressure that buying replacements puts on producers in today's market. And look, this price surge isn't happening in a vacuum.
No, it's tied directly to supply.
It's directly tied to the increasingly tight supply of available heifers.
Yeah, the figures on heifer availability are genuinely cause for concern. As of January 1st, 2025, the number of dairy heifers expected to calve.
Okay, what are we looking at?
It stood at 2.5 million head. Now, that's down 0.4% year over year, which doesn't sound huge, but here's the kicker. That's the lowest number we've seen since the USDA began tracking this specific data. Talk about a historical low.
Wow, lowest ever recorded for expected calving?
Yeah.
And the broader snapshot isn't much more encouraging either. No. The total count of dairy heifers weighing 500 pounds or more registered at just 3.914 million head. That's a 0.9% decrease from the previous year.
And that number?
That's the smallest inventory we've recorded since way back in 1978. Some of you listening might actually remember 1978.
It feels like we're taking a step back in time, but, not in a good way for finding replacements. And what's particularly eye-opening is that even these historically low numbers might be a bit optimistic.
How so?
Well, apparently the USDA has made some rather significant downward revisions to the inventory figures from previous years.
That's right. Between January 2023 and January 2024, the agency revised the dairy replacement numbers downwards by a staggering 371,600 head.
Wow, 371,000.
Yep. That's an 8.6% reduction that wasn't initially reflected in the reports. It really emphasizes the severity of the supply crunch we're in.
So what's behind this great heifer vanishing act then? Our sources point pretty strongly towards the growing trend of using beef semen on dairy cows.
The beef on dairy trend.
It seems to be gaining traction at a really impressive rate.
It is indeed. That, as James Wilson from AgriTrends put it, it's taking hold like shoppers looking to grab deals on a Black Friday shopping spree.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And with overall beef cattle numbers generally on a decline anyway, this move towards beef on dairy looks like a trend with some real staying power. It's not just a blip.
Okay, so recap. The cost of buying replacements is sky high. Fewer and fewer heifers are available for purchase, which naturally leads us to the multi-$1,000 question.
What about raising your own?
Exactly. Is it truly the financial sweet spot in the current climate?
Well, the data certainly leans very heavily in that direction.
Yeah.
While those market prices for purchased heifers have, shot through the roof, the cost of raising them on your own farm, provided you're running a tight ship, offers a very, very compelling alternative.
Okay, let's get down to brass tacks then. Let's look at those costs. According to the Canadian Cow-Calf Cost of Production Network.
Yeah, good data source there.
The average cost of raising a replacement heifer back in 2023 was around $2,904. Now, that's an average figure, remember.
Right.
And it includes everything: feed bills, labor, those sometimes tricky to pin down opportunity costs.
Exactly. And as Dr. Sarah Johnson over at the University of Guelph points out, when you factor in, a typical 10% open rate, and you distribute those costs across the heifers that actually get bred, the average cost per bred heifer drops to approximately $2,382.
Right, $2,382. Now, hold on to your hats, folks, because here's where it gets really interesting. When we stack that $2,382 figure against those eye-watering purchase prices we were just talking about.
Yeah, like that $400 plus per hundredweight peak.
Especially those 700 and 799-pound heifers, hovering around an implied $388.81 per hundredweight based on that peak. We're potentially looking at cost savings at around 54%.
54%?
Yeah. That's not just a little bit of wiggle room in the budget. That's a potential game changer.
Absolutely. I mean, 54% cheaper, that's a massive difference that can significantly bolster a farm's profitability. That's the difference between a profitable year and maybe a struggling one.
For sure.
And it's really crucial to understand where those on-farm raising costs actually come from.
Right. Our sources break it down pretty clearly. The biggest chunk, a hefty 60%.
60. Wow.
Is that opportunity cost. Think of it this way. That calf you could have sold for immediate cash.
Yeah.
It's now an investment in your future herd. The opportunity cost is basically the profit you forego today for that future benefit.
And in this market, it looks like a very worthwhile trade-off.
Seems like it. Other significant cost components include labor at about 9%.
Okay.
Feed at 6%, machinery also at 6%, and land around 5%. The rest is smaller stuff, vet bills, building upkeep,
Precisely. And while that opportunity cost might seem large on paper, the current market dynamics for replacement heifers really shift the whole calculation in its favor.
Okay, now let's zero in on that labor piece. It's always a hot topic, right? Around the coffee pot on any dairy farm.
Always.
And it sounds like it's a real linchpin when it comes to the financial viability of raising your own replacements.
Without a doubt. The research from that Canadian Cow-Calf Cost of Production Network highlights a surprisingly wide range in labor efficiency.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the average is around 15 hours per cow annually, but some farms are clocking in significantly more and some significantly less than that benchmark. Big variation.
We even have a concrete example here. Michael Thompson, who manages a 300-cow dairy up in Ontario.
Okay, what did he find?
He managed to slash his labor costs by an impressive 40%.
40%? How?
Simply by implementing automated feeding systems and doing some strategic grouping of their animals. That's a serious chunk of time and money saved right there.
It absolutely is. And when you compare the numbers between, say, high profit and low profit farms, the disparity is really striking.
Yeah.
High profit farms average just 8.8 hours of labor per cow per year.
8.8.
Whereas low-profit farms are labor away for a hefty 23.9 hours, almost 3 times as much.
Wow, that's huge.
That difference in efficiency translates directly to an average labor cost difference of about $327 per cow.
$327 per cow just on labor difference.
Which can represent a significant 18% of total production costs. So yeah, getting a handle on labor efficiency is absolutely paramount if you want to make raising replacements a truly profitable venture.
Okay, so the potential for significant cost savings. That's a major draw for raising your own heifers. Clearly.
Definitely.
But our sources argue there's an even more compelling advantage, something that purchased heifers they can't offer.
Now we're talking genetics.
Exactly, the unparalleled value of genetic selection through genomics.
This is where things get really exciting, I think, and where raising your own replacements truly shines. You have complete command over the genetic makeup of your future herd.
Right, you're not just inheriting someone else's breeding decisions.
Or potentially they're less desirable animals, let's be honest. Genomics isn't just about, fancier cows on paper.
No.
It translates directly. Think about a 40% reduction in heifer losses, significantly higher conception rates. That means more productive future generations, faster return on your investment.
Yeah, exactly. We have a compelling example here from David Williams, runs a 120-cow dairy near Woodstock, Ontario.
Okay.
He reported a remarkable 40% reduction in heifer losses and a huge improvement in conception rates in his genomically selected heifers. Way better than conventionally selected ones.
Those are the rates.
Over 65% conception in the genomic group versus just 52% in the others. That's a game changer for future productivity.
It truly is transformative. Modern genomic testing has revolutionized herd management. You look at the replacement heifer profit index, the RHPI.
Right, the RHPI.
That's a key indicator. It weighs hybrid vigor really heavily, about 80%. And then the other 20% is split across 7 key traits: efficiency, growth, fertility, longevity, that kind of stuff.
And the impact of that RHPI score is pretty dramatic, isn't it, when you look at the numbers?
Well, absolutely. Heifers with above average RHPI scores, they demonstrated significantly lower open rates. We're talking just 13.7% open.
13.7, okay.
Compared to a considerably higher 23.4% in the group with below average scores.
So that's almost a 10 percentage point difference.
Exactly, which translates to approximately 9 more calves per 100 replacement heifers you raise. That's a level of productivity enhancement you simply cannot guarantee when you buy off the shelf.
Okay, so for any dairy producers out there who are still kind of weighing the pros and cons, buy versus raise,
yeah,
our sources lay out 3 critical questions you absolutely need to ask yourselves before you make that call.
These are fundamental questions, really. They can steer that crucial decision. First, what is the true genetic potential of the heifers you're thinking about buying? As we've discussed, they might be animals that didn't quite fit into someone else's breeding program. Could be culls, basically.
Could be. When you raise your own, you're in the driver's seat of your own genetic roadmap.
Exactly. Second question. What does your current labor efficiency actually look like? Be honest with yourself.
Right. Benchmark it.
If you're consistently operating above that average of, say, 15 hours per cow annually we mentioned, that's a bright red flag.
Yeah, got to fix that first maybe.
You might need to prioritize streamlining your labor practices before fully committing to raising a significantly larger number of heifers on your own.
Makes sense. And the third vital question.
It revolves around your feed cost advantage. Do you have the capacity, the land, the equipment to grow your own high-quality forage?
Because
operations that can, they typically realize substantial savings. We're talking in the ballpark of 30 to 40% on their feed costs compared to farms solely reliant on purchased feed.
30 to 40% feed savings. That's another huge lever to pull for profitability.
Huge.
Okay, so once you've given those questions some serious thought, it's also essential, they say, to keep a close eye on some key performance indicators, to assess the success and efficiency of your heifer program if you go that route.
Absolutely. Tracking these metrics provides invaluable insights into the financial health and, really, the long-term viability of raising your own replacements.
So what's a key one?
One crucial benchmark is the payback period. Essentially, how many years does it take for a replacement heifer to generate enough revenue to recoup her development costs?
Right. Makes sense. And our sources indicate that analysis of Canadian benchmark farms reveals a payback period ranging from roughly 5 years.
5 years for the really efficient ones.
Yeah, for the most efficient, low-cost operations, up to around 7 years for those with higher development costs.
And Dr. Robert Chen from the University of Manitoba highlights something important here. Operations that can keep those development costs under $2,400 per heifer.
Okay, under $2,400.
They not only achieve those quicker payback periods, but they also gain greater resilience, more flexibility to navigate market fluctuations.
Good point. Another key benchmark to consider is looking at the total expense of replacements, but spread across your entire milking herd.
Right, the whole herd perspective. That Canadian research suggests the average replacement cost per cow was about $139 back in 2023.
Okay, $139 per cow.
But there's a pretty considerable range there. It can be as low as $50 per cow or as high as $272.
Wow, big range.
It largely depends on your herd's replacement rate and, of course, the individual cost you have for developing each heifer.
Now, this widespread shortage of heifers, it isn't just some random market blip, is it?
Doesn't seem like it.
Our sources suggest there's actually a strategic element at play here, particularly among the very large dairy operations.
That's a very insightful point, as the dairy sector continues its trend towards consolidation.
Which it definitely is.
These mega-dairies are increasingly recognizing the sort of strategic imperative of maintaining control over their own replacement pipeline.
Why is that so important for them?
Well, it gives them greater security, for one, and the autonomy to implement their very specific genetic strategies without being subject to the volatility and the high prices of the open market.
Jennifer Martinez, she's an industry consultant, even suggests that the top 5% of producers are, in essence, kind of locking down their genetic future.
Securing their genetic future, yeah. Which could, unfortunately, widen the productivity gap between them and smaller operations even further.
It's a concerning dynamic for sure. And with milk margins projected to remain pretty strong in 2025, around $13.37 in hundredweight is expected.
Right.
Those larger operations that have a firm grip on their replacement pipeline, they're really well positioned for potential expansion.
While smaller producers might find themselves in a much tighter spot, maybe struggling to even maintain their herd size because of the high cost and the limited availability of replacements they can buy.
Yeah, tough spot. So, okay, if you do make the decision to raise your own replacements, you absolutely must be on your game when it comes to health management. It sounds like investing in the well-being, the survival of those heifers is just critical.
It's not just important, it's fundamental.
Yeah.
A comprehensive health management program, including a really well thought out vaccination protocol that's non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable.
It's essential for minimizing losses and maximizing the return on your investment in raising those valuable replacements.
And the key vaccines they specifically mention are for IBR.
Infectious bovine rhinotracheitis,
BVD.
bovine viral diarrhea,
BRSV.
bovine respiratory syncytial virus,
BI3.
parainfluenza 3 virus.
And those troublesome clostridial diseases as well.
Right. And the timing of those vaccinations is equally crucial. You can't just do them whenever.
Okay, so what's the ideal schedule look like?
Generally, an initial round around 4 months of age, then booster shots before weaning, another round at pre-breeding, say 13 to 16 months, and then a final set about 40 to 60 days before they're due to calve. This strategic timing really helps build robust immunity during those critical developmental stages.
Gotcha. It's also worth noting that even with maybe a slight anticipated easing of feed prices in 2025,
Yeah, maybe a little dip.
labor costs still represent a pretty significant portion of the heifer budget, around 15%, they estimate,
15% just for labor on heifers.
which really highlights the increasing value of, well, automation. Things like robotic feeders, health monitoring systems.
They're rapidly transitioning, aren't they, from being seen as maybe luxuries
Right.
to becoming pretty essential tools for maintaining competitiveness, especially with rising labor costs.
That's spot on. These technologies can significantly enhance labor efficiency, like we talked about, and potentially lead to earlier detection of health issues, both of which contribute to a lower overall cost of raising those replacements.
Makes total sense.
Finally, let's touch quickly on long-term strategic planning. What kind of annual replacement rates should producers generally be aiming for, to ensure the long-term health and productivity of their herds?
Well, the ideal replacement rate can fluctuate a bit, obviously, depending on your specific herd goals, your culling strategies.
Yeah.
But the research generally suggests that the most efficient operations maintain rates somewhere between 10% and 14% annually.
10 to 14%. Okay.
And that Canadian benchmark farm data backs this up. Low-cost operations averaged around 10.4%, medium cost were at 12.5%, and the higher cost operations were around 13.7%. So right in that sweet spot.
And modern reproductive technologies, things like sexed semen and using beef semen strategically, they can play a pivotal role in fine-tuning those replacement strategies, right?
Precisely. Using sexed semen on your genetically superior females, that allows you to generate a higher percentage of potential replacements from your absolute best cows.
Focus the genetics.
Exactly. Conversely, employing beef semen on your lower merit cows does two things. It reduces the number of dairy heifer calves you don't necessarily need.
Right.
And simultaneously creates valuable beef cross calves that can often command a premium in the market. It's all about strategically managing your breeding program
to optimize both your replacement pipeline and the overall value of all the calves produced on your farm.
You got it. Maximum value.
So when we put all these pieces together, it really does appear that the stars have kind of aligned for raising replacement heifers in 2025.
For some operations, yeah.
At least for those dairy farms that are, well-managed, efficient, and really focused on strategic breeding.
That's the key takeaway, I think. The combination of these super high purchase prices and the really constrained availability has created a genuinely favorable economic landscape for raising your own replacements.
Yeah.
The potential for significant cost savings is just undeniable. And then you add the ability to implement targeted genetic selection that offers a long-term competitive edge you simply cannot buy.
That comparison our sources made really sticks with you, doesn't it?
Which one was that?
The purchased $3,000 heifer might need to produce a staggering 24 calves just to reach the break-even point.
24!
Whereas a genetically superior home-raised animal starts contributing to your bottom line much, much sooner.
It truly forces you to ask the question, doesn't it? Can producers really afford not to be actively raising their own replacements right now?
Especially when
their competitors are likely strategically building future profitability through their own proactive breeding programs as we speak.
Yeah. Definitely some crucial points to ponder there, folks. So the core message here seems clear. For well-run dairy operations, raising your own replacement heifers in 2025 presents some incredibly compelling economic and genetic advantages.
Huge advantages. We're talking potential cost reductions of up to, 54%?
Up to a remarkable 54% compared to buying, yeah. Coupled with that invaluable ability to steer your herd's genetic progress through targeted selection.
Absolutely. And we strongly encourage you listening to carefully evaluate those key questions we discussed earlier.
Your farm's genetic goals.
Your current labor efficiency. Be honest.
And your feed cost advantages or disadvantages.
Put them in the context of your own specific operation.
And be sure to take a close look at those crucial benchmarks for heifer program success too. Understanding your payback period and your total replacement cost per cow. That can provide critical insights into the efficiency and the profitability of whatever strategy you're currently using.
Ultimately, it's about critically assessing your current replacement strategies in light of these really significant shifts we're seeing in the market.
Yeah.
The dairy landscape is constantly evolving, and making proactive, informed decisions in this particular area, replacements can have a profound and lasting impact on your farm's future profitability and its long-term sustainability.
If today's numbers shocked you, $388.81 for 700-pound heifers, 86.3% conception rates in top genomic tiers, you need to act now. Raising replacements isn't about nostalgia. It's about wielding data like a scalpel. As David Williams proved with his operation, homegrown heifers out-earn purchases by 2.7 lactations. The question isn't if you should raise replacements, it's how fast you can build your genetic firewall. Subscribe now. Next week, we're exposing the robot feeder revolution, saving Wisconsin dairies $261 heifer annually. Until then, this is the Bullvine reminding you, in the dairy game, you either crunch the numbers or get crushed by them.